The recent Nintendo Direct delivered an announcement that so many of you have been long waiting for. Chrono Cross is finally getting remastered and is coming to Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. The rebirth of this long-awaited title has been anticipated for a while now, although ironically this was supposed to be a surprise announcement. If you recall, back in September of 2021, Nvidia's GeForce Now service had a massive leak detailing a list of several upcoming games that were bound for the service. That is, would be playable on PC. This leak came not from the hacker doing anything too malicious from my understanding, but simply by manipulating the client to get the server to reveal some not so well hidden database entries. When this happened, Nvidia responded that these titles were merely speculative titles, and nothing on there was an official confirmation. This was an idea that raised an eyebrow for me. Who on this earth was speculating about Final Fantasy IX Remake prior to this rumor? Nobody, and I mean nobody, was speculating about this. Why would they be speculating on remasters of Chrono Cross and Final Fantasy Tactics when, again, nobody was speculating on these titles at the time? I mean, I don't know about you, but I wasn't speculating on God of War coming to PC at any point. Thus, to me, this could only mean one of two things. Either they were lying and they did have inside information confirming these titles, or they knew inside information which allowed them to speculate on these titles and were able to deduce well enough that they were likely real and should be added to their database. So in either case, there was always legitimacy to this database leak in my eyes. And at the time, I said if this so-called speculative list of Nvidia's has any validity, it would be the biggest leak in video game history, leaking the announcement of several titles way ahead of time, not to mention the list of several PC ports that hadn't been announced yet. Now looking back at this list of titles, with Final Fantasy VII Remake having come to PC, Chrono Cross Remastered also being announced, and a whole host of titles inside and outside of Square Enix also being confirmed. It seems as though yet again this database leak is completely legit. Now this means that titles like Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered are indeed on the way, but it also means that titles like Kingdom Hearts 4 and Final Fantasy IX Remake are more than likely real, which is insane. As for when Kingdom Hearts 4 will be announced, the answer seems relatively straightforward. The series is having a 20th anniversary event, and plenty of people are going to be watching. This is likely where they will be announcing it, and they might even get me back into the franchise again if Yozora does end up being the protagonist. That series is long overdue for at least a soft reboot. As far as Final Fantasy Tactics goes, Final Fantasy is celebrating its 35th anniversary, and it would be a fantastic celebration title. But then there's the question of Final Fantasy IX Remake. Back in June 2021, it was confirmed that a French animation studio would be working to bring FF9 to life by creating an anime based on the game that is presumed to be a retelling of the game's story. Of course, through the Nvidia leak, it was later revealed that it was possible that there was a Final Fantasy IX remake in the works. If you don't see what I'm getting at here, it's very possible that the anime itself is promotion material for the game. That is to say, a companion piece. The anime itself is still extraordinarily early in production, and it's likely that we won't see anything from it until as far out as 2024. And assuming it is real, because despite the evidence, I still have a hard time processing it, I imagine that the two would be revealed alongside each other. And of course, with the legitimacy of this title being in development, you have to think who is developing it. Of Square Enix's internal teams, Creative Business Unit 1 is tied up with Final Fantasy VII Remake and its subsequent parts, and that's probably not going to wrap up anytime soon. The rest of CBU 1 focuses on Kingdom Hearts, and they're definitely working on the next major KH title. Creative Business Unit 3 is busy with both Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy XVI, and creating the future identity of the brand. Then there's two other units which focus predominantly on non-Final Fantasy titles. CBU 2, who works on Dragon Quest, Nier, and the Bravely series, and CBU4, who primarily works on the Mana remakes. While it's possible that either of these two could be secretly working on it, I get the feeling that this remake may not be something that is internally developed by Square Enix, but instead outsourced. Now, before you rush to say that Square would never let an outsourced partner handle a sensitive project like Final Fantasy IX Remake, you have to remember that's exactly what they did with Final Fantasy VII Remake, outsourcing the game's development to CyberConnect 2, with key staff such as Yoshinori Kitase and Tetsuya Nomura overseeing and directing it. Although this relationship ended poorly with Square Enix moving the title back in-house, though it's worth noting that that's the exception and not the rule. Other titles such as the Platinum Games developed Nier Automata have been a massive success. But with all that said and done, if Final Fantasy IX Remake is real, who do you think is working on it? Subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let me know in the comments below. Shout out to Gabriel Bobowski and the rest of the Ultima community.